And I never felt there was a need to transition between the two of us. After all, I did work in Russell's show. I was their most trusted writer, and I was his choice for a replacement. So we were always on the same page about Doctor Who. You just take it to what everything is interesting now. What do people want from Doctor Who now? Is what you think, rather than thinking it's a transition. I don't think the audience give a toss about me or Russell, or even know we exist. They care about watching Doctor Who and it being good. And who those middle-aged blokes are wandering around behind the scenes, who cares? Not as differently as you'd probably think. I mean, the Doctor is fundamentally the Doctor, and the thing that you're selling to the audience is really underneath it all, he's the same man. So initially, with each new Doctor, I remember because I'd written for Chris, and then Chris suddenly left, and we had David, and I was saying to Russell, what do I do? How do I write this one? And he said, I don't know, he said, I'm just writing it the same. Try writing it the same. So we wrote it the same for David. And then you start to, without thinking about it, pick up on a different, gabblier, younger, prettier Doctor. And you don't, but the decisions you make are instinctive. It's just because David starts to get into your head. And when I first started writing Matt, I didn't even know Matt would be playing. I wrote 2 episodes, maybe 3 episodes without the part being cast. So I was just writing kind of generic Doctor. And then as Matt's madness and flopsiness and sort of charm took over, I started to write his. And I think I'm writing him very differently from David now. I can't really imagine David in the face of the crumbling universe putting a fez on. That became a very Matt Smith thing to do. So it just happens gradually. You let the actor drive it in a way, their persona, and their voice gets into your head, and you start doing it that way. I didn't. Russell did. While he was busy giving Cybermen and werewolves and Satan pits to everybody else, he gave May of all people, the French girl. I don't know anything about her. He said, you have to go and read this book. I said, I have to read a book in order to write Doctor Who. He said, yes, you do. So I had to go and read a book about frocks and all sorts of things. So that's why. But then I really liked her, but I was struggling a bit with what would the most accomplished courtesan in history, designed to flatter the ego of an egomaniac. What would happen if she met the Doctor? Oh my God, I thought, he'll fall in love with her. She's built for him. I just thought it'd be terrible. She's basically trained to deal with an egomaniac. Unleash that on the Doctor and you've got trouble. So it became, and when it became a sort of little mini love story, I love love story though, so that was it. But it wasn't my choice, it was absolutely Russell. I think he got the idea because he'd written Casanova. A very, very good version of Casanova, and a character he'd wanted to include in that more extensively was Madame de Pompadour. But he hadn't been able to, so he decided to put her in Doctor Who. And the lazy bastard gave her to me instead of him, so what can you do? It usually, to be absolutely honest with you, depends how much time they've given me, or rather, nowadays I've given myself. So it can take a long time, or if I've got to get it in next week, I'll get it in next week. You know, I've written them in a week, I've written them 6 weeks. You know,
6 weeks. Oh, no.
Well, those are the extremes. On average, I would give myself 4 weeks to write a Doctor Who story. But I've done it quicker, I've done it slower. But you know, if they needed one, if they said everything's fallen through, you need to write an episode about the Doctor and a spider tomorrow. Well, I may have only got 3 actors. I'll just do it. You know, you can do it. It's horrible, but you can do it. What's changed in my work? There's an awful lot more of it, I think, mainly. I mean, that's the main thing. It's non-stop. It's every week of the year, it's every day of the week, it's every month. It's just continuous. The actual business of writing is always the same. So writing an episode for Russell, it's exactly the same as writing an episode for me. You know, I just sit in a room saying, I can't think of anything. But the actual having to be across the whole series, it's the most full-on, demanding job in the world. And what you should do in a job like that is not then take on another series that's just as big. But I did. Stupid. Sitting down. Not really. I mean, they're actually quite different. I've just fallen off. I've just done a Doctor Who followed by a Sherlock, and overseeing the other scripts, and now I'm back onto Doctor Who, just starting Saturday, Monday. They're quite different, actually. I mean, Sherlock's got a very odd rhythm to it. I mean, quite long scenes. The main character is very cold and cruel and unpleasant, whereas the Doctor's sort of charming and lovely. I suppose what they have in common, which I very much like, is they both fetishise intelligence. They're both about an incredibly clever man. But Sherlock Holmes is all about telling people he's clever, and the Doctor doesn't even care he's clever. He hardly notices, he's forgotten about it. It's background noise for him. His brain is so big. With Sherlock Holmes, he can't walk past someone in the street and say, "Come over here, I'm bloody clever. I'm cleverer than you." They feel quite different pieces to me. But I understand also that from the outside they probably look quite similar. It's the four best cheekbones in British television, that's for sure. But the idea was to do sort of big, exciting television movies. The original plan was to do 13 episodes, or to do 6 episodes, 6-hour-long episodes. And we just didn't feel that it was Ben Stephenson's idea, originally the guy at the BBC. We didn't feel it suited the show very well, because if you just have a 60-minute plot, you don't really have much time for Sherlock and John just to be talking to each other, which is actually the selling point of the show. So just creating enough space for an exciting plot and your two leads being the best friends ever, it felt right, it felt proper. Well, to be honest, all those things are in the original. I mean, that's what Sherlock Holmes is like in the original. I mean, now we call it autism or Asperger's, though in fact I think it's a false diagnosis. He's not quite that. He just chooses to not care about people. He's perfectly capable. He's obviously very fond of John. He's extremely fond of Mrs. Hudson.
It's quite arrogant.
Oh, he's terribly arrogant, but he would just say that's honest. He'd just say it's honest. I know what I mean. But all that comes from Doyle. It comes from the page. He's not a nice man. He gets nicer as the stories go on. We will do that, because he gets humanised by his connection with Dr. Watson very much in the original story. We first meet Sherlock Holmes in A Study in Scarlet in the original book, and which we duplicated in A Study in Pink. He's appalling, he's frightening, he's humourless, he's cold, doesn't care about anybody. As the stories goes on, he sort of discovers his a kind of heroism. He's never exactly nice, he's never exactly warm, but he has more connection with other people and more sympathy and more wisdom. But this is what we've got in Sherlock. Is Sherlock at the beginning of his career? He's a young man. Normally Sherlock Holmes is portrayed in his 50s. This is a man in his early 30s.
It's more interesting.
But it's also, he's 20 years from becoming Basil Rathbone. He'll become Basil Rathbone someday and be much wiser and calmer. But right now, he's still the early version. John Watson, again, he's more like the original. I mean, the words that Martin Freeman says, he's a doctor and he's a soldier. He's not brilliant. He's not a genius by any means, but he's carved out of solid competence. Yeah. I mean, he is the man a genius would trust. Yeah? I mean, a genius doesn't trust anybody. A genius trusts someone you can trust. And Sherlock Holmes' judgments are perfect. He knows that's a man who tells the truth, and that man is totally competent. He's not massively clever, but Sherlock Holmes doesn't need somebody massively clever. He needs somebody competent and honest and reliable and with no ego at all. So he knows, I think it's a huge compliment to say to someone, you're the man, the cleverest man in the world would trust. So, but again, those elements come from Doyle, those come from the original. We're quite, although we've done the radical step of updating it, we're quite faithful to the original. Well, that's good though, isn't it? That's a surprise.
Yeah. Good surprise.
I think part of the reason for that is how we departed from Doyle's Moriarty, because Doyle's Moriarty became the template for every supervillain who ever came after him. They're all like him. So he became, if you did Doyle's Moriarty now, he would seem like a cliche, even though he's the original, So we just couldn't do a supervillain now. We couldn't do a Bond cat-stroking villain. We needed to do something different. We thought, let's try and make him genuinely frightening and unhinged. Having a very good time. I mean, everywhere else in the whole world has got better answers to that. Never ask a happy man where he wants to go. He just doesn't really want to go anywhere. What would I want? I mean, would I really go and visit? I'd take some DVDs of Sherlock up to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and see what he thought. He'd probably punch me. I don't have but it's honestly very, very content here. Boring answer. Sorry.